So Curtis, what brought you to Story Expo 2014?
A friend of mine did it before, the expo before, and I've been to 2, 3 other pitch fests, and he said this one would be different, and he's right. It's been different so far.
And you flew out from?
Flew out from South Carolina.
Okay.
And I maintain a place here only because if a meeting happens that I need to go to, I can just hop on the plane and have a place here, and that's happened quite a few times. But
oh, it has.
Yeah.
And so, do you drop everything and fly out?
I drop everything. I teach, so I have an assistant take over my class and I hop on a plane. So.
Nice. What do you teach?
Criminal justice.
Okay.
Criminal justice, and it's law enforcement, retired, so I went to get my little certificate and felt like it'd be a great thing to do. So love it. Yeah.
So the story that you came to pitch today, how long have you been working on this idea?
I started, wrote a book, and it came out in '01 called Juvenile Justice 101, and toured for a year on the book. And I really wrote that book just for people in the industry that in my field, because dealing with juvenile crime is a lot different than dealing with adult crime. You arrest a kid, it's different. So it ended up being a novel that touched a whole bunch of other people besides workers in the juvenile world. And so went to Long Beach to speak at a conference, and then this producer asked me to write a screenplay and send it to her, and I did. And they ended up optioning the screenplay. Nothing became of that, which is why I'm here, because I redid everything, and At Risk is what it's called now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
How many times have you rewritten this?
I have probably rewritten this one maybe 7 times. 7 times, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I left out a lot of the things that, when you're dealing with kids, unlike adults, you become closer to these families, because it's not just the kid you have detained, it's the family. So I lost 8 kids during that either murdered or was murdered during my tenure with the prosecutor's office. So I had to go back and put some of those things in because I couldn't really deal with them. They were too fresh. And so that's probably why, 7 now. I've rewritten it 7 times.
Wow.
And I got to say that the reason I actually do this is because I met my brother when he was 12. Never even knew I had a brother. And my dad said, "Hey, here's your brother." And he was already in the gang. 12 years old, he ran the whole neighborhood. He's on trial now for murder. He murdered his girlfriend last year. But he told me, after he read my book, I dedicated the book to him. And he said, "You've got to do this show. This is my life." He went to juvenile detention when he was 13. He's 33 now. He's been in jail the whole time. So that's why that's my #1 project.
Right.
Because I want to see a TV series dedicated to just juvenile crime. The stories are just crazy.
So that's been the driving force for you, is this personal thing, and knowing these different people that have since passed away.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not just you're hoping to get a deal and walk away.
It's way more than that.
Yeah.
Way more than that for me. If it were just to get a deal, I would have stopped a long time ago.
Why?
Because I feel like, if it was for the money, Hollywood's a different animal to deal with, And not that I can't take rejection, but usually, as my wife tells me, I don't have patience for that, So if someone says no a few times, I'll just say, okay, I'll do something else. I don't take it personal. But this one, I have to stick with. My paralegal at the time, a year before I left, Liz, she said, there's no way you can stop this until a TV show happens, because we lost a great kid that year. He got out of a gang. We got him into an alternative school. He was literally walking to school that day and got gunned down. His first day of school in Florence, South Carolina, just outside of Myrtle Beach. And that kid, for the whole summer, did community service, did whatever. And he said, "Mr. Ray, please keep me in this community service thing, because if I go home to the neighborhood, they're going to get me. So work me during the daytime." He begged. He rode his bike 5 miles just to come downtown to work in the city center. And his first day of school, they killed him because of something he did the year prior. So those are the stories that I have to keep this going, And when I pitch, of course, I use that because it's real. You can't make them up.
Has anyone ever told you to tone down the violence because it's too much?
Yeah. Actually, you know, it's funny you say that. A couple of years ago, my manager and I, and my former manager, and he said, before you go in, I got to tell you something. They shot me some notes. And he said, you know, I don't know how to tell you this, but they think it's going to be a black thing. And they think it's too violent. We don't want any gang stuff and all that. And I said, well, they haven't read my book, you know, because in my book, I have people from all walks. Before Columbine, I dealt with a kid who threatened to blow up his school. And his family was rich, you know, he had 2 doctors, and he had a lab downstairs in the basement, and he could have done it. So it's not about just the gangs and about black kids in the neighborhood. Someone said to me pretty much before that same thing happened that this needs to be a wire thing. It'll happen, you know, if it's a wire thing. And I said, you know, I'm not in this to redo The Wire or a black-white thing. Crime reaches across all colors, nationalities, you know. Crime has no color. And so when I write for everyone. I have kids selling pills in rich neighborhoods, boxes of pills. They have pill parties. Their parents drive Jags. They're doctors and lawyers. They didn't see it that way, so, you know, they thought it was going to be a black thing. So those are the kind of the walls you run into.
Right.
Yeah.
But you still keep going.
Still keep going. Yeah.
There's many reasons, many people.
Yeah, many people. One girl gave me her high school diploma. I got her out of a regular high school and got her into an alternative school. Had no idea that she was graduating valedictorian. And her mom kept calling me one day and said, hey, can you make her graduation? She really wants you there. And I said, well, sure, you know. I didn't think anything about it. But when I got there, she started talking about this guy that she took a night to school. Gorgeous girl, green eyes, you know, really light skin from her. She was mixed, you know, and everybody hated her at school, the girls, because she was pretty and all the boys liked her. She took a night to school to protect herself, and that's how I got her. Well, anyway, her name is Jonisi. And so Joe got up, gave her valedictorian speech, and was talking about this guy, and her mom elbows me and starts smiling. She's talking about you. I said, what? Well, I had gotten her into the alternative school because my high school girlfriend was the guidance counselor at that school. I called Joey up, and she got her in. Nobody would take her. And she was a straight A student. So, and now she's married with kids and doing well. So these are the things that, you know, I did it so long, so I have probably more stories than most. Mm-hmm. But those are the reasons why I got to keep going, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she gave me a high school diploma. It's on my wall at home. So, yeah.
Curtis, did you get to pitch yet?
Yes, I pitched. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
I pitched this, I think, 5 times so far.
And how much time did you get?
5-10 minutes. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's who you get and and whether or not they ring the bell, so to speak. You know. Yeah.
Oh, they literally ring a bell.
Yeah, I think there was a bell one pitch, but then, you know, it stopped. I don't know. Somebody said it's probably annoying, but yeah, it was like 2 to 5 minutes, and then 1 minute, one pitch I got 10 minutes. So the guy didn't want me to get up, so.
So how did it go? Like, what was
went
the
well?
feedback?
Went well. I'm pitching. I've written 15 projects at this point, and I pitched 5 today. And at risk, I'm pitching 3 times. Obviously, it's my, you know, number one. But I'm also pitching 2 other projects that are near and dear to my heart. So one is Front. It's to Logo TV. My cousin came out, and I'm the only one that, you know, will deal with her now. And so I wrote a project called Front on her life. And then the other one called Hazmat. It's a crime thriller terrorist thing. A friend of mine went to Iraq 3 or 4 times, came back and dealt with some interesting things that happened when he got back as an injured person. And but he foiled a terrorist attack in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, nobody ever really heard of it. So I wrote it. Yeah. So anyway, they kept the dirty bomber there, by the way. And someone was trying to get revenge for Charleston keeping the dirty bomber in their brig in the Navy Yard.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were trying to, 2 USF students, University of South Florida students came up, and they were gonna engineering students. They were going to construct these robots to blow up some things because they were family members of this guy. So anyway, so I wrote that. So that's what I'm pitching as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
But most of what you write about is all juvenile justice?
That's what I write most about because, that was my field. Mm-hmm. I've written all 13 episodes that I was required to write in order to pitch it to executives. Yeah, Sony and a few other places I've been.
What did you expect would happen at Story Expo? What did you have certain notions about it, or you said I'm coming here with no expectations?
I never have expectations at all when I come to these. I started coming to these in 2004, came to my first one. I used to fly out here and act like I belong. That's kind of how I do things. And I'd walk around LA, Beverly Hills, feel like I lived here. And there were pitch fests, so I'd go to them. So I kind of put myself in places that I think I need to be, and things happen. So a lot of my friends say, you're crazy, man. You're going out there with nothing, and but I met contacts, and when I moved out here, all my friends already made my friends and my contacts. But I never really have expectations when I come to these. I just have conversations about my work.
Do you think, having been in law enforcement, you just felt like it's like you've seen probably worse than anybody's seen, so it's like, how bad could it be? Maybe somebody just says, all right, great, and walks off.
It's funny you say that. I was at the firm. I don't want to name drop, but it's a huge company. And they were getting into TV. They were big on management and the music side. I mean, you walk in their offices and everybody's there. They've managed everyone. Anyway, the guy calls and my manager and says, we're getting into TV. You got anything? And so he sends me over. And the guy listened, and it was great. Great pitch, had a good time. And then he says something that really pissed me off. He said, okay, we got, this rapper and that rapper, and, I said, well, why'd you name those guys? Because they're tall, because they're short, well, they're black, and so he tried the thing again. So I said, listen, this is a show, like I told you earlier, it's about everyone. It's about kids in trouble. Kids in trouble come in many flavors. And he goes, well, you're going to regret it if you leave this office without a deal. You're going to regret it. So I said, listen, man, I've seen people on the street dead. I've walked through crime scenes where they would blow your mind. I've seen a kid pick up an Uzi and spray a neighborhood when I was on patrol. This is nothing, And my manager tried to stop me, and come on, you're gonna, mess it up. And I said, no, man, look, I want to be in business with someone who wants to be in business with me. I want to be in business with someone who's not mean and nasty. I've already dealt with that in the police world. I don't want to deal with that here. So if this guy tells me I'll never work again in Hollywood, whatever, But I'm not going to leave until he hears what I had to say. So anyway, needless to say, that didn't work out. But but I made my point.
Have you considered just making the film on your own? Because you
I have
ideas that you want, and you don't want the studio or whomever to just change it.
I have. I actually had a guy approach me. I grew up with a really rich guy, and his family. His dad was a senator, and his old money South money, cotton money. And it's funny because his family owned my family back in the day. We never even knew it growing up together. They own a real estate company. They're huge. Anyway, he came to me and asked me if I wanted to make it, but he wanted to control everything. That's just the kind of person he is. And I'm not really big on, and I was all about the dollar signs, and I'm not rich, but it's not about the money for me. If that had been one of my other projects, maybe, but not this one. Yeah, I'm just way too passionate about this, Right. So he wanted to commercialize it, and I'm not really big on that. So, yeah, we still talk, so so that works.
So this was near where you grew up, obviously.
Yes. It's Columbia, South Carolina, and Florence, Columbia. I worked in mostly. I was the arbitrator of the year for 1 year, and I had to go to all the other arbitrators in the 16 circuits, and I had to supervise them for that 1 year, and so I saw stuff all over. And the misconception is crime happens just in big cities, but little cities, some of the worst crime I've seen has been in small towns. And I think one of the reasons is because the kids are bored. They have nothing. No boys and girls clubs there. Then you got Barney Fife as the sheriff and his sidekick, and these kids know that. And gangs have taken over small town America like crazy, at least in our state. So yeah, I've seen a whole lot in those towns. Yeah.
So what kind of notes have you gotten, aside from making it more commercialized or keeping it one theme?
Yeah.
What other notes have you gotten about your work?
I've actually gotten, really, it's funny because I pitched earlier to a company that I pitched on Virtual Pitch Fest. I don't know if you've heard of them. I pitched on that site, and the guy said, well, we're going to say no now, but if you add this, maybe we'll say yes. So I noticed he was here, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to take him at his word, and so I added those two elements. He suggested I added more of a political element and a community-based element. And so when I sat down with him a little while ago, I said, hey, you're the guy that told me to do this. And I showed him the pitch. I actually ran it off, from Virtual Pitch Fest. He said, oh yeah, I remember writing that. And I said, well, that made it a better piece. And so he was, flattered by that, of course. But he said, dude, I got to see it. But I wanted him to see that, you're the one that told me to do this. You can't say no now. So he actually said, okay, you're right. I can't say no. So he got the screenplay. I brought it with me and I gave it to him.
Oh.
Yeah. So some of them do.
Do you keep copies of your screenplays in your car?
I do. I keep them. Gosh, I keep 2 in my bag, and I just believe. In fact, I gave one to someone I met in the hall. We were talking, and the guy, it's your calling card. Of course, obviously, I'm not going to walk around down the hall passing it out to everyone. But if I feel like the conversation warrants it, I gave it to this person because he's a struggling writer, and he said to me, "Man, I just don't know, what to do. I pitch it, and they don't get me, and whatever." And so I gave it to him, and I showed him 7 versions is what it took to get to this point. So, he left, I think, but I just gave it to him. I said, "Man, it takes you a while. You can't quit, because really, you come to these pitch fests and you're overwhelmed, especially if you've never been to one." One guy in the bathroom, I told him he was so nervous. I said, "Man, look, and I don't know why me. Everybody's asking me, but I don't care. I'll tell him." I said, "Man, look, this guy put on his pants the way you did this morning, probably. I don't think his pants just appeared on him. I mean, so he does the same thing you do every day, probably. He's a human being, and so calm down. He was about to throw up. I know that's vulgar, but everybody kept walking past him. I said, "You all right, man?" He was red, And so he calmed down. And later on, I went to lunch, came back, and he's in the hall, and he said, "God, man, thanks, you saved me." I said, I didn't mean to, I don't want to save you or nothing like that, but I just want you to know that these are people in that room, and they've got something you need. You've got something they need. They need you more than you need them. And that's why I keep coming to Hollywood. Because think about it. I mean, if they don't have stories, Hollywood doesn't exist. That's the way I keep myself going, anyway.
How many people were in the room when you were pitching?
I'd say about 15 companies at the time, and so each had someone at their table.
Oh.
Yeah, so maybe a little more, but.
And there's no one else from the Pitch Fest in the room. It's just.
They have the moderator, if you will, the person that says time, and
or rings the bell.
Rings the bell, yeah, that's funny.
Is there anything that, looking back on it, you say, what, I should have done this, I should have explained this differently?
Yeah, actually, I always have. I do a critique after, everything I do. And I could have said this. What about this part, So no regrets, but just to make it stronger. So I usually take notes and then add that if it's, sometimes you just don't have time to do it, but if you can, yeah.
So it sounds like an advice that you would give to other filmmakers, and I'm just assuming this is just to find something that you are just so driven by.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like no matter who tells you yes or no, or it needs to be more this or that,
right, you're
still going to keep going because this is what you get up for.
It's my passion. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I use the word passion. I'd have to say that yes, I'm passionate about it, but I guess more so I'm interested in people seeing what I've seen. More than that. I want them to see, and maybe there's a conversation that can be had about why these kids are this way. how, in my opinion, the families are, pretty much breaking down. That I told you earlier about the kid that had the doctors as parents, that was drawing up, he had the plans to the school. But he told me, and I actually put this in my book, I changed a few words, but anyway, he told me, he said, his parents were arguing in my office. They didn't want to be there in the first place. Why is my kid here? He didn't do anything, and that kind of thing. We've got more important things to do than be here. And so they were fussing, and so he looked over at me and he said, you see why I smoke weed, and you see why I want to do something to put my name on the map? They never pay attention. Look at that. So, so those kind of things I want people to see and have a conversation about. So that's kind of more than passion. I want people to actually see this stuff. And maybe, and I hate to say this, but every time a new politician comes into at least my state and they lean a certain way, they take away funding for the social programs to help these kids stay off the street. And my state happens to be one of the biggest doing that. My funding was $50,000 a year. It cost $32,000 to lock up a kid. Because this particular year they were asking for the flag to come down, the Confederate flag to come down, one politician said to me, as I was at the General Assembly begging for money, me and all the other arbitrators, he said, I tell you what, we'll give you your little $50,000 if you'll leave that flag up there. And so that's what we dealt with. We ended up getting the money anyway, but that's what we dealt with. Yeah, so I'm not the kind of person that'll stick it in your face, look what we did, and I'm still going, I'm still standing. But I want people to see that, and I put that piece in the screenplay. Every time something happens, they want to touch the juvenile crime money. And so they lay off people at the schools or whatever. So, yeah, that's what I want people to see.
What do you show in some of your scenes on how to approach a kid that's at risk? And so you're not that authority figure looking down on them, which...
Yeah, rarely works. That technique rarely works with kids. Let me say that because kids are so desensitized these days, you can't scare them, first of all. The scared straight thing, it doesn't work. Kids look at you and laugh. They blow up stuff on the video game all day, and they watch stuff on YouTube all day. So, at least a lot of the kids I dealt with, they were desensitized. So if you come in with this attitude where you're gonna preach at them or talk down at them, and young man, pull your pants up, that just doesn't work. You have to relate in some kind of way. I'm not saying be fake about it. Kids can tell you the real deal every time, because kids are used to dealing with the real deal. They'll tell you, man, be real, because they can spot a fake. And so what you have to do is you have to be as real as the other people on the streets are. For instance, I had a kid who walked into my office and he said, Mr. Ray, I ain't going to jail. I ain't worried about this. I'll beat this rap. Well, he had seen it on a movie, right? And I said, okay, well, I'll just send you back to court, because I'm the only thing that stands between you and this juvenile court. He said, go ahead, no problem, send me. So I sent him. 2 weeks later, I walk in the courtroom and sit in the back to watch my case before the judge. At the time, Tupac had just gotten arrested in Atlanta, and when the judge talked to him, he turned around and wouldn't even acknowledge the judge. The judge was talking to his back. The kid did the same thing. He turned around and he said, talk to my back. So you can't fake it with these kids. You have to be real. So that's what I try to do in my piece and my book. That's what I try to do.
And also having them gain your trust when most of the adults they probably didn't trust, and that's why they're there. Yeah. You have to gain their trust. I've been there. I have to say I've never done a drug. I've never been in trouble. But I've been there. I was the guy that everybody would say, hey, Curtis, man, don't tell anybody this. But, I was always that guy. I was never the guy that actually did the stuff, but I was around the people who did it. I wasn't foolish enough, because I had 7 uncles who'd say they'd kill me if I did, while they smoked weed, by the way. Don't ever do this, I'll kill you. But I listened, to those guys, my uncles, and I would say, maybe they're right. I shouldn't do that. And so I could relate because I grew up with those guys.
Most of my friends have been to jail. I've lost 7 friends. And I didn't grow up in what we call the hood. I grew up in middle-class America. So to say 7 guys from middle-class America died because of crime is a pretty big deal. But I can relate because I've grown up around this. And so when I talk to a kid, you know, I don't sugarcoat anything. If you do, it holds you at arm's length. So I try to be as real as I can with them. And that's the way I come across in my writing. That's part of the problem for some people because it's too rough for them. You know, it's definitely for cable, HBO, Showtime, something like that.